task force meeting to order. And we have 14, I believe, members present, so we do have a quorum, so we can proceed with the meeting. First order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from our May 27th meeting. 15.
Sorry.
What do you want to call? Any amendments to the meeting minutes from our May 27th meeting? I'm seeing none. Okay. Want to open to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make comments this evening, either in the room or if we've got somebody online? If you're online on a phone, *5, and if you're on a web application, you look for the raised hand and we'll recognize that. Anybody? You can speak? Yes. You can just approach the table. So please identify yourself and.
I'm David Kapler at 255 Southeast Andrew Street, so very close to City Hall. My brother owns the Antique Importers building. He's owned it. The story back on that, it was on for sale, big sign on it for months. And the East European couple that owned it had kind of not an antique store, but more household goods. But anyway, he bought it because he was on lease space down on the Seattle waterfront. And so in 1986, he bought that. And sometimes he had a shop there. Sometimes other people used it for other shops. More recently, that has been his only shop because the lease rates on Alaskan Way, after we got rid of the viaduct, much higher. And he likes Issaquah, and it works for him. My concern is nobody's talking to him. And I think it's kind of ridiculous, the proposal talking about using City Hall South and the duplex. And you've got 4 homes that use the alley for their main access. And we have 3 fourplexes. So we're talking at least 16 families, 16 residences are using that alley. And you're not going to be able to get rid of the alley. You're not going to be able to make it a dead end so you can have your city hall. And you're going to have to have it high enough so the garbage trucks can go through there. It's just you're not going to have a low time. And I just think you need to be, somebody needs to be talking to my brother. I do not have any financial interest in that property with him, but I have a major interest in other properties with him. So, that's my disclosure that way. But, I think that's an area to go. You've got a space between his building and City Hall. You could consolidate that to one lot. You could gain some extra property right there just by not having to have a setback on 2 different ownership properties. So it needs to be at least looked. Somebody needs to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kapler. Is there anyone else that has recognized for comment? Okay, seeing no other comments, we can move forward with main agenda items. We have 3 main topics this evening. We've got an overview of renovation options for the police department's facilities. We're looking at city-owned locations and taking a look at those, and then we're going to go through an exercise to rank from the task force those city-owned options, and then we're going to discuss the community outreach plan. So it's a fairly full agenda tonight. So I'm going to work to try to keep us on task and keep us tracking, but want to make sure we encourage everybody to participate too. I think all voices are certainly welcome, and we'd like to hear from everybody as we go through these topics. So first off is, I think DLR, is it Lori or somebody? Jean's going to start. I'm going to go through the options for police modification.
I'm just kind of as an overview a little bit after Mike. Usually we, talk about the project goals a little bit. I'm not going to go through them because we've seen them a couple of times now, but just a reminder of what those project goals were. This meeting is really about trying to bring you a little bit more detail about the IPD renovation and also about our outreach kind of planning, getting some brainstorming on that. And then also kind of helping us refine some of your preferences for locations so that we can bring you better options next meeting. So a reminder about how we talked about reaching consensus and getting to a point where everyone can support have their say about what the final options are. And also a little bit about what we heard at the last meeting that we did the prioritization, where we definitely heard, yes, we need to move swiftly on the police needs. Yes, we want to maximize the use of city-owned property and do that fit that within our own means and reduce the impact, minimize our impact to the IPD operations. So it's kind of, but what we didn't get a lot of sense of, so when we tried to go back and come up with what options we should bring back to you all, I would say maybe we had a little bit of bias and we recognized that. We thought we're going to go back to the group and talk to them more about location. So that's the exercise that's later. But so, yeah, here are the things that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to hand it over to Lori to talk about the IPD.
So what we're going to present to you today is they're all a rough order of magnitude. So they're not a shot in the dark, but they are this is what we think is going to cost. It's a range. There's nothing hard in stone. We haven't had a cost estimator come in and do these estimates, though I did talk to a cost estimator about our assumptions and he thinks we're all good. And that we did review these with IPD, but we're at a level of design where it's just, there's not a lot of back and forth. We're saying, is this proof of concept going to work? Can we get rid of, can we find a solution that might work for IPD that reuses at least 50% of the infrastructure and walls? And then we looked at an option where we are only going to reuse probably 10% of the walls in there. So it's one is more like a renovation and one more is like a gut and renovation kind of a situation. But knowing that as the project moves forward, when you get into design, there's going to be a lot more iterations before we is having a lot more conversations, a lot more back and forth. This is a proof of concept, not a full design. We also didn't look at the site changes that'll need to happen in order to support the changes we're doing inside the building. So maybe we need to change where police are parking on their in and out kind of time where right now they're parking on the main road. Maybe they'll park on the side of the building. All of those are included in the cost. We just didn't look at them in depth at this point for the proof of concept. There was a couple of conversations that we had where, they said, well, what if we, okay, so one issue we're having is how to make more use of the building for IPD functions and meaning making the lobby smaller and more secure. And that poses a problem because we have to go through the lobby to get to the jail. So IPD said, well, what if we just access the jail from outside? There's a stairway outside. We could just have people come into the jail from the backside, and that would open up the lobby and the Eagle Room to be more usable by IPD. So they came up with some interesting ideas like that. And then what we heard from them was not necessarily a pros and cons list for each item. It was more, there was a lot of detail, like, I don't know that room should be there. I'm like, yes, I understand. We might not want to put that room there, but this is proof of concept. But it was more prioritization, like access control and security was important to them. The fitness and locker area were important, where we're going to put evidence storage and things like that were the most important things that came out of the conversations we had about these renovation options. So that's kind of an overview of where we are. Two options we came up with. So the first one is the most cost effective. This is reusing 50%, at least 50% of the existing walls. And this is just organizational. I'm not going to get down to where a bathroom is or where an office is with you all. That's a little bit too much detail. But generally speaking, we move dispatch upstairs. We give the dispatch and break area over to evidence and storage. Patrol stays on the first floor, and there's a lot more staff support upstairs. So more officing and work areas are downstairs, and then conference rooms, break room, things like that are upstairs. So that's how this one kind of broke down. Not everything in here is not perfect, but it aligns more well with providing them the space for the services that they have. And so again, the time frame on this one is about 33 months. And again, this overlaps with, if you remember from before, we had a time where we had to move people out of City Hall. So City Hall functions need to move out of City Hall. And that's why this one starts kind of 3 months into the process, because we have to have construction and design aligned with people moving out of it. So just to give you that idea, that's why we're starting 3 months into the process. The total project cost, which is estimated, so total project cost, let's have a conversation about that. Total project cost is construction cost, what you're going to pay to a contractor, plus your costs. So the city's costs for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, any kind of design fees, permitting fees, sales tax, whatever all you have to do, that's considered soft cost. So we have hard cost, what the contractor is going to get paid. Soft cost, which is all the city's costs that are associated with it. And right now, those city costs are hovering in the 35 to 40% range of construction costs. So it just depends on a lot of different factors. So depending on which option it is, we use 35 to 40% costs. And so the cost range, assuming today's dollars for the 50% remaining renovation. So the most cost-effective renovation is going to be between $15 and $21 million. In today's dollars, we escalated that out at 5% per year, and that gets you to almost 18 to 26.5 in terms of total project costs. So that's just to give you an idea of what time does to money in this situation. Yes, sir.
Does that cost include relocating the administration people out?
No.
Can you remind us how many square feet that building was?
The building's about 25,000 square feet, so there will be compromises that. So we came up with a space list of all the spaces that the IPD would want to have. We will be compromising about 5,000 square feet of those spaces because IPD said they needed about 30,000 square feet of space, a little less than 30,000 square feet. The building a little less than 25,000 square feet. So there are some compromises, like maybe an office, instead of being 150 square feet, it's going to be 120 square feet, or maybe we're not going to have 3 wellness rooms, we're only going to have 2 wellness rooms, those sort of things won't change. Does that make sense? Any other questions on this one? So the next option is where we're only reusing about 10% of the building. And again, patrol is staying downstairs. Evidence and storage take over where the fitness and lockers are. And fitness and lockers move upstairs, which is not necessarily ideal, but not the only police station on the planet that's done it that way. The New Tupelo Police Station has their locker rooms and fitness upstairs. And there are some things we can do here to massage. But this is the other thing that this option does, which is just an idea, is it reorients the front door of the building to this orange part in the middle that says lobby, which is between evidence and storage and records. So we're pulling the lobby completely away from where it is now and moving it to the middle of the building. Some of the IPD folks said that feels like a much more secure building to me at this point, the way you have that done. So it was just an interesting conversation to have about it. And then that makes that Eagle Room, conference room, much more integrated with the rest of the building, right? So it gives us a little bit more options there. And this one, we would definitely need to look at relocating the entry to the jail to the outside of the building. So we'd have to look at some security and building upgrades just on that outside of the building where there's already a stair. And so then if somebody needed to come in who needed to use the elevator, they would have to get staff to help them do that. That's basically escorted to the elevator. So those are those 2 options, just to give you an idea. And again, these are proof of concept. They're not final design by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, sir.
There's no remodeling done to the basement.
This excludes the jail entirely, except for the entrance. How the public would get to the jail.
It's true in both options.
True in both options. The jail is a whole nother ball of wax that we got to think about in a bit. That's a good question. Any other questions about this one before we go on to cost? So this one will take about 32 months, a little more efficient because we're not having to work around so much of the internal walls and whatnot. This one in today's dollars is anywhere between $24 and $26 million. And then in 2030, it'd be between 31 and 30. And these include this, all these numbers also include the $5 million for seismic upgrades to the building that are required as well. So it's not just renovation costs, it's renovation and that seismic. And that's about $5 million.
You want to say
Sure.
But does that include any type of evidence, like expanding the evidence?
Yes.
Okay.
It includes expanding evidence as well as expanding dispatch.
Councilmember Martins.
So I'm assuming it also include armoring is the wrong word. The outside cladding, better cladding, security the outside of the building.
But well, it's not going to change your brick, but it will it can improve the glazing security. Yes.
So all of you.
Or yes, new with new windows and or adding on a layer to the windows. Yeah. There's lots of different ways you can do it.
Okay, so you said these costs include about 40%, 30 to 40% soft costs for the city. But those soft costs, the question that John answered, don't include moving the city.
That it does not include moving the city. No.
Okay, so can you give us an idea what those soft costs do include?
Yeah. So they include design fees, permit fees, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So new, because the other thing that
For FF&E for the police station, not for the city.
the police station.
Right, okay.
And generally speaking, if you're designing a building to be more modern, to support efficient spaces, you are going to have to replace your furniture.
Yeah.
Like that's just a cost you're going to have to incur. We don't want to be moving big old tables over to a space that isn't designed to support it. It actually costs more money to move than it does to buy new. So,
Okay.
and then sales tax and any other kind of project management fees. So if you were to hire an owner's rep or those fees.
Thank you.
It does include if we have to displace any of the police out of the facility. It just doesn't include the city hall project.
Great. Okay.
Other questions?
So some pros and cons we have is they're pretty much the same. The most cost effective is good improvement from what they have now for both of them. A couple of folks said that they might prefer the the larger renovation project just because it seemed to give them more options. But I think the options that they were thinking about was just they didn't like where a particular room was, and so if we had 10 more during the design process that would get solved. There wasn't any big roadblocks in between either of them. They both improve security. The more comprehensive one does reorient the lobby, and they thought that was a benefit to the overall workings of the police station. The current most cost-effective option, so the 50% renovation one, does not address expanding the locker room, which is something they want to do. So as that would move in further into design, we'd have to have a bigger conversation about how to adjust the locker room to make all that fit for them. And they both create issues with accessing the jail, which we did talk about in terms of moving them to basically behind the building. So, yeah. Oh, that's right.
Okay, so Eric, go ahead.
Just thinking ahead to community outreach and messaging, the numbers look to be somewhere between $800 and $1,000 a square foot in $25
For total project cost.
total project cost. So I think some may question why it's so expensive, given that the outside of the building is going to remain there. So I guess my question specifically is how much of that cost is incremental due to the phasing of the project? I mean, is it in the range of 10% or 25%?
It's in the range of 10%. If we were to build a brand new building right now, you would look in $25 total project cost, we're looking at $1,500 to $1,600 a square foot. So the most cost effective option is somewhere between $300 and $500 a square foot for construction costs. So if you break down what we found, if we break down how the cost gets built to that overall number, people understand it better. Mm-hmm. And then understanding that as you all move into design of that facility, there's at least a 10 to 12% contingency in that 40% number. And that gets, as the building design becomes more known, that number will come down as well. So, at this point, we're being conservative. We're not being crazy conservative. We're not, being irresponsibly conservative. We're still being conservative. Did I answer your question?
I see a name tag, but I can't see the face, so I'm not sure. I see Barack, and I see one more. Jason? Oh, thanks, Jason. Okay, Jason and Rob.
All right, so this may be hard to gauge, but I don't know if you guys had any conversations. Is there a difference between longevity between the effective and comprehensive models? No. So would the building last 5 to 10 years for effectives? Nothing.
Same.
Type of information.
No, there will be no difference between this. No, because both, if there's a building system that needs to get replaced, that's going to be replaced.
In both models.
In both models. The seismic's going to be done in both models. So really, if you think about this wall here, it's not going anywhere unless you, right? So that's all we're saying is the walls are staying. Likely none of the floor finishes are staying, none of the ceiling finishes are staying, but 50% of the walls are staying, and that's where we're saving money.
In terms of local growth, as far as the meeting.
Well, couldn't one option become more functionally obsolete? Like if we did see a need for even more security in the future as this community grows, and if we went with option 1, which is less secure, suddenly we're faced with, okay, we should have really done option 2 because this building is just not secure.
Because of the lobby, you're saying?
Yeah.
I think the lobby commentary is definitely an operational conversation we can have about securing the lobby wherever it is. It was just it was just an organizational concept they thought was more, that could provide more secure building. That being said, I don't think where the lobby goes is going to make or break the security of the building, because we'll be able to secure the records window, the door that goes in the inner lobby pretty well. So I think organizationally, if seeing more security room at the conversation we had, but I think we can manage it either way. So I see what you're saying. But in the future, I really do think, I don't think there's a big operational difference between the two options.
Brock.
So again, that may get to what I was asking on, were the police saying, wow, I'd love to have the comprehensive, that would be fabulous, but boy, if we got the, cost effective, that would be great also. And like how much.
That is a perfect summary of what we heard.
So that answers my question. So it's like not like, great, we'll take that.
We'll take anything.
We'll take anything that works for us. Yeah, but it's not like it's 1,000 times better. No. It's like, no. It's better.
No, it's just,
okay.
Yeah, that's fair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Holly and Trish are here to keep us, on the straight and narrow while we're reporting out for PD, which is correct.
Well, I'm glad that was the response also.
Yeah. One more thing about that is that you all know this, IPD is doing a great job with what they have. They have make-do-itis real bad, right? They have it real bad. And so anything new and any more space they could possibly have, they will take it and do the very best that anybody could do with it. So I think that it's not a fault they have, it's just what they have. They have make-do-itis. So, but I really do feel after looking at the in any number of permutations of these options, because these aren't the only two options we've done, that there's not a significant difference between the improvements that the building gets between the less expensive and the more expensive option. Now, will we end up somewhere in between there? Maybe, right? That could be an option.
I'm curious on the most cost-effective option. Well, first of all, we all heard from the police department that, and saw that the locker room and the fitness area are undersized and underscored. But I'm just curious why, in the most cost-effective option, if we're going to open up the entire second floor for the police department to move offices and other things up there, why we just can't expand the locker room and the fitness area on the first floor, because there would be more space to do that.
We can. So when we did our options, it was not an iterative design process. It was let's go away, do some things that we thought were pretty cool, give them different options, go talk with them a couple of times, not like a design process, right? So there's just continued iteration that happens during a design process. So this is just where we happen to stop with proof of concept, and would just be the next design phase would be okay, let's figure out where are better compromises besides not expanding the locker room and the fitness room. Where should we make those compromises in order to give you what you want, your priorities? So it's just a design choice that needs to get made during the design process. Just the particular one that we went with to show you all did not address that. But the design process can, working with them, understand how best to adjust the plan.
Okay.
It's just we could iterate on this forever and a day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't good use of everybody's time for us to do.
Is there some argument with them that would be like the optimal layout operationally that will really serve them best in the long term? Because even on the comprehensive plan, it sounds like it's kind of washed between the both. So is there like a wish list that we have from them?
No, that's not, we haven't moved into the design process. We're just in this pure planning proof of concept that could they improve their efficiency and operations by staying within the walls of this building. That's all we were trying to improve. We were not trying to complete the design process. So do they have some wish items that didn't get put into either of these options? They do, because we have a space list that shows that they need about 4,500 square feet. So that's kind of where we are, that we had to get to a stopping point just for this study. And so the optimizing of the renovation will happen during the design process.
I think they did, on our list of kind of what, as they started to prioritize looking at the options, that having the groups kind of together, there was some conversation about, like, do the commanders all need to be together or should they be with their groups? So there's just a lot of operational changes that, like Lori said, they've been making do for a really long time.
It's called make-do-itis.
So now how do you undo that in a way that they like, and now they're going to operate better? So
but different. It's still a cultural change for them, right? Understand, like, moving even where evidence is or where dispatch is a cultural change. And they're like, I got to rethink about how I do my job every day, because things are going to be in different places, right? And that's not even considering the time that you're going to endure during construction.
I have another question. Is there any sort of study or a mathematician or a statistical analysis that would say, if we put this before the voters for a bond measure, so most comprehensive would have this percentage chance of passing, or obviously a lesser amount would have a more percentage chance of passing. But what I'm getting at is, if we had some kind of a measurement to say the most comprehensive plan at those numbers would have only a 5% chance of passing, why would we even do that?
Is there any?
Take that?
Yeah, I want you to take that.
The bond measure, were there to be a bond measure that is going to have the best chance of passing, is the one that passes muster with the community. And that doesn't come down to what is the optimal solution. I mean, it could be,
but it's also what are voters getting for their dollar. We have worked with clients where we've gone out for a bond measure. That bond measure was unsuccessful. The clients, pared the project back. The city of Salem, they lopped off, $8 million from the project. We took some things out. We went back to voters, talked about what was removed to show that we were listening to their concerns about it being too expensive. And it was much more successful past about. Conversely, we worked with a school district here in the Metro Seattle area where there was a bond measure. It was unsuccessful. What the community said was, this doesn't solve our problems. Like, what they wanted was a bigger solution. District came back with a much larger bond measure, much more expensive bond measure, which passed. Voters were much more appreciative. So there's not if we do this much, we lose this many. If cost goes up this much, we lose this many.
Okay. Got it.
It's not a science. I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
It's really not a science. And then every community is just different.
Yes.
Some places will just vote no just because.
Any other questions? I think this is the end of your slides in this topic. Any other questions on this topic?
Was there any costs associated with temporarily moving some of the police department out while you do?
Yeah, that's part of the 40%. It's not a soft.
And one last question. Can you flip back? I'd like to see what the most cost effective price was in the $20, $30. Just my notes. So 17.8 to 26. Okay.
Again,
I'm looking through these proposals. I know they're rough and final design or anything else, but in general, I think that one of the features that you should keep is having the lobby offensive. More cost effective on the lobby here to be on the public access to be on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So as a point of feature moving forward, I like the park comprehensive because it shows the lobby on Sunset where people can see it from the streets, from the parking, and that can find a way to go. That's all.
Okay. Any other likes, dislikes, or general kind of consensus about these options?
Just a quick, I guess I'll share a quick thought. So just based on the numbers difference, I mean, the option 1 versus option 2, and we're looking at a $9 to $15 million difference, depends on when. And is the difference, the benefit between those two worth that additional $9 to $15 million of cost? And I would say they're just based, I don't know, it's you're looking at adjacencies and all that. It's very early in the design. It's hard to justify that kind of a jump for is a fairly, in my assessment, fairly small incremental gain. So I think you have to be, cautious about what gets added in. I mean, it isn't about building, perfection here, because I think that's just, the Taj Mahal is too expensive. But it is about creating a functional building that serves long-term the police department. And so I think it seems like my read is the lean is, let's make sure it's functional. But that big leap to get to that next level seemed like it might be a lot. But like you said, Lori, it could be somewhere in the middle too, once you get into a deeper design. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts? Oh, again.
Just to expound on one of the things to look at, usually when you do something cost effective, it usually ends up being less attractive in the long term because you lead a lot of companies. If things are more expensive, then over 10, if you have to remodel again in 10 years versus remodeling again in 15 or 20 years, which option actually pays more dividend? And then, of course, there's also the make-do-itis and the morale stuff, the staff. If we address some of their daily pain points so that they have better recruitment, better retention, those kind of things. That if that's a better option, that costs more, but it makes the building last longer and have the retention and stuff, then is it really about investment? So it's never just as easy as what's cheapest, right?
Well, Eric.
Piggybacking on Lori's comment about, we're not necessarily promoting either of the solutions that are out there. And in all likelihood, we're going to be looking at some hybrid. The lockers and the gym probably need to be addressed in some fashion. So I'm wondering whether this conversation is actually useful, because we're looking at two options that aren't fully baked, and perhaps neither of them will be what we end up going to the public for support.
Right. That could mean that you all are in your recommendation say it's, we think it should be somewhere in between these two, and we recommend that the city pay $25 million and $25 to renovate the IPD.
Mitch.
I know, like, wait, Paul. Mitch.
Yeah, I was just as I'm sitting here thinking, the jail does need some renovations as well. That was made pretty clear to us, and I'm thinking that if option one, the lesser cost option, was acceptable to the police department, and that's what we recommended. There's about a $12 million difference, I think. Could we then take that $12 million, but the larger cost was acceptable? What was an acceptable pill to swallow? Then we could take that extra $12 million and put that into the jail, and then get everything. Has there been any discussion with that? No. Has there been anything looked at from a rough order of magnitude cost on what it would take to renovate the jail, or what we might do with the jail?
We have started that conversation.
We have, okay. Because that seems like an avenue we should approach, I would think. And we can get a lot more for those dollars and still satisfy IPD.
That is what I just hit me that, when you said this doesn't include the jail, I thought, okay, the next slide is the jail. And that hasn't happened yet. Are we going to be, the next meeting, which is the last meeting? Like, when does, my bigger question is timing. Like, when does this turn into the recommendation of the council that then recommends the bond? Like, does there need to be more design work done before that's? What's that bigger? And what's the idea with the jail? Is there a recommendation?
Wouldn't that fall on IPD? They got these solicited, comments on IPD staff, and I can easily assume that since the jail is not included in one of these things, it wasn't the most important thing to IPD staff.
Right. Yeah, but
So the jail just is not part of this
at all
conversation.
Jail.
The focus is right. The focus has really been on
Jeff,
city hall. And then the parking
so the tour was to
Shock it on.
Shock.
And that's not to say that there's not things that need to be done in the jail, and that won't be.
It sounds like some things like the entry, the egress. Yeah.
It's not something that we're asking the task force to really address.
There's a conversation that's part of our contract. It's not part of the task force task.
Okay, so then the other question, so the original question was, if you say, yeah, we think about $25 million, does that then go to, is there a step between us recommending that and city council saying, yes, that's what we want to voters? Or like, is that like some of that design process to dial in, or it's just like, okay, we're going to have a $25 million budget, and that's what the design will have to accommodate?
Are you afraid we're taking?
No, forget the jail.
Right. So what will happen is that whatever bond, if the bond passes, when the bond passes, that's all the money you get. You got to design to that.
Okay.
End of story.
Great. So there's no design between now and when you say this. Okay, that's what I thought.
I mean, by all means, the city could bring on a designer ahead of time and start design of a renovation before the bond passes. It's not usually recommended because people are thinking, you guys are just assuming that we're going to say this is okay and haven't done it yet. So, yes.
One more, and then we're going to can do quick closing comments if anybody has it. But the one thought here on the recommendation piece, instead of getting hung up on the exact dollar amount, this much or that much, is about what are the outcomes that we want to recommend happen from the project. So there's a list of things that we've already heard about: seismic improvements to the building, improving the functionality and efficiency of the police department, improving the ability to recruit and retain. There's a number of different things that are outcomes from an investment like this that we should be thinking about incorporating into the recommendation. These are the outcomes that we'd like to see happen from the project, and we could put a scale in there if that's helpful too. So we're going to get to this a little bit later. I think Justin's going to help us a little bit with starting to craft the recommendation and kind of a narrative that we want to communicate out from the task force related to what we think is the direction that we'd like to recommend to the mayor and the council. Any other comments on this topic? All right, good discussion. We can move to the next one. I think that's you, Jeannie.
Yep. So this is the part about kind of taking a step back again and asking a little bit more about location. We had such a fun time last time doing the ranking exercise. I thought, let's do it again. More specifically about how people are really feeling about location. You know, the Pickering versus Senior Center versus Civic versus at work, so that we can bring you some good options, right? That reflect what the group is really trending towards. So we went back and I pulled both the slides, that we had shown, as well as added some bullets from the conversation that the group had the last time we talked about city-owned properties. So that's kind of reflected in this, that we go through that really quickly. If people have things they want to add, that's fine. And then we'll kind of do our little ranking exercise. Lori will have her fabulous Excel spreadsheet tally, and then we'll talk about outreach stuff.
Can you talk about like how much square footage does City Hall?
Yeah, so it's about 33,000 square feet.
So there are two that we're carrying. Are you going to?
Yeah. So generally it was about 33,000 square feet when we did the space needs study. It's about 112 staff. So if you're thinking about parking kind of arrangements or traffic in those areas, it's not already. Also, when we looked at the senior center location and the at-work location, we added an additional 10,000 square feet to that. So it would be 43,000 square feet, assuming that we are combining functions in that new building. Right. We can't just, we didn't want to just assume, it has to go somewhere. So that was kind of a choice we made in evaluating how it fits. So Lori did a little footprint so you can kind of see how that fits on the site and how many stories it would be as well. So the senior center, is about 33,000 square feet is the lot. The building would be 3 stories, 14,000 square foot a piece. So that accommodates both, that integrates the senior center into City Hall. See how that fits. So some opportunities and challenges. So some of the comments from last time were it is an existing pretty vibrant space. There are some challenges about size and integrating a senior center. Right? We would have to relocate temporary the senior services, but then make that some really positive synergy to have everything together, having the senior center spaces with community meeting rooms. We do have some current and planned investments. So they're just finishing the plaza. We got a grant to put solar and battery backup storage on that building for about $1.5 million, $1.5 million. So we would want to be thoughtful about reusing those investments as best that we can. There are some memorial field covenants that we haven't really dove into at this point. Some folks mentioned traffic and parking concerns, but they are parking and traffic concerns that are already there. So is that a plus or a minus? That just is. The building condition, we did our condition assessment in 2023, was good. The building was built in 1984, just for like some context about the age of the building. The other.
And I have a question. If the senior center, and we may have talked about this before, I just don't recall, but if the senior center location was chosen, then what would happen to the existing building that houses City Hall South right now?
The staff recommendation has been to demolish City Hall South.
So that would just be demolished, and that would still be city-owned property. And how would that be used? Has there been any discussion on that?
I mean, it's been, right, it was identified for the fire station. It's
okay.
It wouldn't be City Hall in this.
Right. Yeah, no. So the building would be, so the building would be demolished and the future use is to be determined.
Okay. That was
the recommendation.
It could also be liquidated. We could also liquidate it, right? You could also
sell it.
We can sell it to this gentleman's brother.
Caroline.
Yes, we've talked about this before. I go to activities there. It's a very vibrant center. We've just put in a major investment in public art. I'm on the Issaquah Arts Commission. I would really discourage putting any additional stress in that senior community. And I think it'd be very unpopular with any kind of community outreach we're going to have to get funding for. And it would be so much more complicated having to find relocation. To me, this is like the bottom of the list of opportunities. I think it'd be really unpopular and very difficult, very challenging.
It could be a challenging operational. I know Justin mentioned, somebody mentioned Marysville. That's a senior center that's part of their city hall, so it's not anything, but it would be a change.
Yeah, and maybe they started out that way, possibly the age or shift when we just put in the new plaza.
They actually demoed their senior center in order to make a plaza with their new police courts, City Hall building.
So on your comment, I like to think like, okay, 20 years out, is that going to be a big challenge? I mean, it's whenever there's a constructor, not whenever, but last Way Viaduct was a nightmare. I couldn't get to my girlfriend's house in Snoqualmie Ridge when they closed that intersection for 5 days. And I understand now it's constructive, but is it 3 years of disruption for 25 years of something that works really well and isn't an issue? You know, is it like, wow, you can buy like a city hall and a senior center, something like that, that functionally doesn't work? As far as, you know, artwork and that great plaza that's not quite open yet, it's just got some process, you know, either keep them or integrate artwork later. So I guess, Caroline, my question is, when you said that it was just, that it wouldn't work, because it wouldn't work now, or it wouldn't work, like if we could snap our fingers and the building was built, it still wouldn't work?
Have you spent any time at this?
No, I haven't. No, I'm asking. I know nothing about it other than
and I do, because I spent a fair amount of time there. So again, it would be disrupt. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The senior center building and all the activities work great as they are. We're already dealing with City Hall employees and IPD, and then bringing in the seniors as well when we don't need to. We have other options.
My question is,
yes,
it's not working. The building was built. It's done tomorrow, and it is City Hall with the senior center on that spot. Is there something about that fundamentally that doesn't work? Or is it the disruption of moving people for years or however long it takes? That's the issue.
I think it's more complicated than that. We can snap our fingers and have it done immediately. I don't think it's necessary, and it's mixing combinations of communities maybe that we don't have to. We have other options. If it was the only option, maybe.
So I think what we're hearing is,
Yes.
So yeah.
We're looking at
Okay,
this
so
one.
when I asked people, you said that Marysville didn't quite get, is it work, it sounds like they combined it in Marysville. Is it working there, or are they finding there are problems?
It's working.
Okay,
But how long was the transition? Was it?
so I think the point of this conversation is there are significant challenges, as we're flagging a bullet up here, to make a transition like this to include this.
But there's no, fundamentally, there's no
What I understand,
fundamental issue with having them.
and you're trying to
It's
create,
the interim that's the
it's the long-term view that you're trying to.
I'm trying to get the long, 20 years out, where are people going to
So I want to go, I'm going to Chris, because we haven't heard from Chris yet, so I'm going to call on Chris now.
Well, I agree with what was said earlier. I think the disruption is something to seriously be considered because you've got a large population that has the time to read and vote, make decisions. And I think it's something great. Yes, snapping fingers to the future might be great to have this co-located dynamic situation, but getting there might be so painful that I think it's just worth considering. If we really want to displace a third population and have it possibly untaxed.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. It's like, I want it.
Thanks, Chris. April.
Hopefully I'm not disruptive with this comment, but I think any solution is going to present an inconvenience to somebody. You go to Pickering Barn and try to build something, you're going to ruin a bunch of wedding photos. Like everybody's going to have a complaint with this. I like the saying temporary inconvenience, permanent improvement. So there's going to be some pain and suffering, but at the end of the day, it's the outcome and improvement for somebody or our population.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Somebody with marketing expertise. Okay, so Miriam.
I actually think it's the parking concerns the thing for the senior center that's the biggest thing for me is because if you're adding meeting spaces, you're going to add volume. And I do think, Carolyn, we did add something to the conversation about the synergy. You're not feeling the synergy is like there for it. That is something, it's going to be a hard selling point if they're not feeling that like, I don't want these services there. And you're right, a very active voting community. Also, also.
Oak to Beehive. Jason and then Eric.
I think the last thing commented pretty well. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I think the senior center would be a great location, and I think construction is always going to be an issue regardless of where you build. But having said that, having to have an effective campaign, you would be antagonizing typically for some of the stronger voters who do have the time to read and possibly advocate for law enforcement. So that's my very concern. I think construction is a problem. So that doesn't really bother me. I usually keep it out. So like you said, after 2 to 3 years, anybody that has never been there, it'd be like, well, I don't think it would be an issue.
So I'm going to do Eric and then Brock quickly because we've got just several other sites to look at here. So
just a quick suggestion of another criterion to add, because we've talked about parking and related to this site in particular, but I think access and visibility, if we're going to be spending tens of millions of dollars on a new building, and it will be the visible presence of the city, that maybe that's not the ideal location for it. Not necessarily just talking about parking, but access and just visibility to it.
Great. Okay, thanks. Good discussion on that site.
City Hall South, the duplex. So this lot's about 20,000 square feet. It would be the 33,000-ish square foot building. So it'd be 3 stories.
It would be a lot line development.
So it is a tight space, and that we could end up having to compromise some of the space needs to fit within that footprint. It is adjacent to other public spaces. There is some potential kind of creative use of the parcels or the Reindeer Trail parcel and we're in the alley parcel. We haven't really explored. Again, sort of that same, there is existing traffic and parking issues in the area, but these are the same people that are there. So the duplex property is very underutilized. So that would be potentially a good use of that space. The building condition is poor. Previously, we had reported it was built in 1982. Technically, it was built in 1957-ish. And then it was remodeled when the city bought it in 1986. So that's why it was kind of in the 80s. It was the old fire station.
Can you show where the duplex is on the map?
It is this parcel right here.
Okay, so got it.
And how large is that parcel?
Sorry?
How much square footage could we put on that parcel? I'm thinking even if there's a separation between the two, sorry?
The two combined are 21, so it would be 7.
Yeah, okay.
6 or 7.
So it might be enough to put community spaces if we were to separate.
Yeah, maybe put a common center. Got a lot of buckets up.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I thought the antique shop was off the table, but that's another 10,800 square foot lot. I mean, looking at that's excellent frontage. Traffic is an issue everywhere. But I think that's an optimal space. City Hall.
Are we just talking about the alley? I think that's the public comment. Sorry, the alley. I think it was the alley.
Well, the alley and the
Make sure.
What's that? It's not a piece of property. The alley? Right. No. Yeah, keep stop. Yeah, I know. Well, I know that. I don't go from that position.
Brock.
Yeah, I exactly the same thing. I thought that was on the table, and every time I walk by there all the time, I'm like, boy, if we don't own that property. And is that property roughly the same size as the duplex? And if we were to purchase that property and sell the duplex, is that going to be, kind of a wash? I mean, I think to me, that's the most, not having seen, the other, breakdowns, that makes a lot more sense going just across and selling the duplex or using that parking or something like that. Because I was under the impression that that was not for sale.
And that's the building directly east, right?
Yeah, 155.
Yeah.
And there's in the corner on Sunset and Second, a 3-story building going up with townhouses. And it starts making a nice frontage. There's that lower piece part. Yeah, I had exactly the same. That changes all my thinking about doing everything on city property, if that's for sale.
Well, he didn't say it was for
I didn't say it's for sale, at least having a conversation about what would that look like. That to me has always been, I thought that you had already.
So I think the direction that we agreed on was kind of maximize the opportunities presented by city-owned property, and so looking at this concepts that capture what we're trying to accomplish on city-owned property. Like Lori said earlier, we're still early in the design development on this whole on all these concepts, not only the police and public safety building, but future city hall. So and I think Autumn mentioned it in a previous meeting that if opportunities arise that could kind of redirect things because they're unforeseen in the moment, then there's nothing that prevents that from happening.
Okay, yeah, really.
So I think, so I think at this point, they're following the direction that we provided. And down the road, things could change. Let's see, we had Andrew, you still up down there? You're okay? Oh, sorry.
So how much interaction is there between the employees at IPD and the employees in City Hall? And the reason why I'm asking the question without knowing how much interaction there is between the employees or between the public that goes back and forth between those facilities is there's a lot of traffic on Sunset, and And if we chose this location, how many more employees are going to be walking back and forth across that crosswalk, holding up traffic even more? That's what I'm wondering about. And if that's an issue, maybe there's not that much interaction, so it's a non-issue. But if it's an issue, Kemper Freeman's been pretty successful in downtown Bellevue with building sky bridges. What about building? And maybe that's a pie in the high thing, a pie in the sky thing. But what about building?
It's pretty pricey. Huh? It's pretty pricey.
Yeah,
It's more like some bomb gas and maybe that's a 10 building blocks.
Like at the Capitol.
Okay, time out. We're on a tangent here. We're going to reel her back in a little bit. Sky bridges aren't in our charge here. So when it gets bad enough, it might make financial sense.
So that's not even worth discussing.
Yeah, that's
Skybridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really expensive. Wouldn't make sense there.
But also, you have IPD here. They could tell you how much they have to go.
I would say probably me that probably goes upstairs and home, and it's not very often. It's mostly the maybe our paychecks and employees are.
So then how often is it that a public person comes to IPD and to City Hall and has to do business at the same time? Not very often.
So, but if there's a traffic jam, we can still blame you for it though, for going across the center. Okay, that's what we need. Jason.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say to add to the conversation a little bit is someone who lives on Front Street, I can guarantee you it's not city employees who are clogging up that road. Guarantee you it is. Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Not in the morning and not in the afternoon. It's not city employees.
Yeah, correct.
Any other comments on this site? Questions? All right, see you now. Let's try another one.
Pickering, super large lot. This would be the smaller city hall without any additions. So 2 stories, 17,000 square feet a piece. So some of this was an interesting opportunity that came up. So it is near a lot of services, Pickering Trail, got Costco headquarters. There's a lot of synergy with Pickering, Barn, and the market. It does have creek setbacks and flooding concerns that would need to be addressed. Has decent, good access, lots of space, lots of potential, including interesting architectural tie-ins with the barn and that type of thing. It is an underutilized lawn. Whatever your feelings about the lawn may be good or bad. There is no existing building.
I think last time I had a question about where the 100-year flood line was and where the 100-year flood line was.
We didn't map it.
I could map it in the 10-minute break.
Cool.
Lit a bunch of items.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can get that to you before. Okay. Yeah, if we're in the flood zone, you either have to get out or filled up, right?
Correct.
Okay. Jonathan.
Do you have an idea how much of that green space would be consumed by the new building in parking lot?
There's already quite a lot of parking lot up towards where the L comes down. If you because there's a big parking lot there. So I tried to use as little as possible of the grass area and tried to make it kind of a buffer for those fields from the main road as well. So I kind of
there would still be some green space.
Yeah, there's still big green space, especially on the east side.
Other thoughts on pros and cons on this site? Questions?
Easier to construct on, right? Lay down space.
Yeah, way easy to construct on.
Yeah, so
This one's soft cost would be in the 30 to 35%.
So less.
less.
Mary Ann?
Can you go back to the picture? Is there a reason why we put it facing the 16th? Why it's facing? Is it just Spanish you wanted that access to it?
It's just purely, it could go anywhere. I was just purely making it, there's this buffer between the main road and the fields.
Just to show how much. Okay.
Yeah.
Because your point is there's a lot of separation between Pickering, Barn, and that.
Yeah, I just meant that I just thought I have more parking.
You you put that box in.
Chris?
Yeah, just from a real quick look on King County's IMAP, almost the entire parcel is in the 100-year floodplain. That doesn't preclude making it happen, but it might eat up that 5% of hope for soft cost savings just getting there, and might make it more difficult if you're going to do like, one halfway below ground parking or something like that. We're considering.
Yeah. Thanks for your quick research on that, Chris. So we're in the 100-year floodplain. Yeah. Site. Marilyn, still. Any other thoughts or comments? Questions? No? Okay.
The at-work parcel on Juniper and Devon. So there's a conglomeration of five parcels there, 115,000 square feet. In this instance, we did add 10,000 square feet, roughly the size of the non-warehouse space of the current at-work facility. So assuming that something like that size would remain on the site for the referendum requirements. So 2 stories, about 22,000 square feet each. And some of the conversation at this site, we did add the additional size and cost to maintain some of that work capacity. The current lease that we have with at work expires in 2033. So either we're doing something with that lease or waiting until that time period to build something. There is potential to promote, there was some conversation about potential to promote higher density in that area of central Issaquah, and kind of long-term potential that may be a good location. It is currently underutilized in terms of how much space there is there. There's a lot of space. It has a very different traffic and access situation now than it would if there was a city hall there. So that could bring in some concerns or some opportunities. Building condition is 4, built in the main part of it was built in 1982.
How much of the property did we have to dedicate to, I think that rough 37 buildings?
How much do we have to dedicate?
Yeah, how much percent?
There isn't
a number.
No. I kind of went with there. I mean, so that is something that we could. Something has to remain as far as we're aware.
Go with Barack and Eric.
So the traffic / access is a very odd term, and I'm just trying to imagine. I mean, it's like little tiny side streets. If there's done any thinking about what that would look like.
This is just reflecting kind of the comments from the last group. So some people thought, well, it's good because there's not a lot of traffic. Some people said, well, it's kind of bad because they're little narrow side streets. Yes. So this would be a big change.
Another thing that there's not much we can do with that. I mean, there are other things that we can do with that property in 10 years. Other than, in addition to having the facility, a plan, they could parking, whatever.
This is the, right now there's very little parking on this existing site, even though it has a really big building.
Yeah.
So that is probably the one thing that's kind of different than some of the other locations, is to build parking for that amount of staff or visitors.
Eric, then Paul.
Yeah, I mean, along the lines of what Barack was saying, I think I've only been there once or twice, and it's the ambiance of that neighborhood is that it's a low-scale residential neighborhood, more or less. Is that fair?
Well, there's been a lot of nice apartments.
There's a number of
I understand.
Yeah, it's nice.
There's townhomes being built basically next door.
Right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, along Juniper.
Yeah. On 7.
Seven.
The corner.
Okay.
So this corner.
I guess my concern was just, 112, 15 employees coming and going from there every day creates a different, an order of magnitude traffic issue as opposed to higher density housing.
It does. Also remember that the building supports 112 employees. It doesn't mean that 112 employees will be there every day because we're still have a very flexible work from home schedule for this.
So echoing that, I go by this a lot because my son goes to IBE there, so I'm driving through that area. So cars can get there because obviously everyone funnels there to go to IBE all the time, but it is very much just a residential neighborhood. Even with all the townhomes coming in, it just feels like it's just part of the neighborhood, just a side street. And so I think coming at it, if I were to drive there and be like, wait, City Hall's there, it would feel so out of place in that spot. Because it just feels, we're in the middle of houses. We're not getting any kind of center or thought of commercial until you get a few blocks out till you get to the Safeway and all that sort of stuff out there. In that pocket, I would very much be shocked to see a City Hall in that spot personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't feel
right now, but I think as Issaquah grows, I think it has potential to, I think the function of City Hall will create the opportunities in that potential neighborhood. So I don't want to dismiss it based on our vision of it at the moment. I don't love it. It's not my favorite, but fair enough.
It's more gentrified now.
Yeah, I think that do other things in a city. I have a vision of a City Hall as very much a part of the city, and so it just as a focal point, so it just feels bad and it's odd.
You're still losing, but always going to be this problem with that particular piece of property. To do anything, you can't sell it.
No, but it can still be parts department can set up there.
Carolyn's got her name tag up. I'm gonna move on to Carolyn.
Is there the option for City Hall employees to move directly into this space, or would it take work and?
The building is not.
That would be. So we're seeing none of these 5 options would circumvent having to lease space particular City Hall employees before they go to the new house, right?
No.
really.
Okay. Mitch.
We were talking about the narrow streets and stuff. If this location was chosen, would there need to be street improvements made, widening of the streets, things like that?
There definitely have to be a traffic study to understand what improvements could need to be made. Usually in those sort of areas, there's not enough street frontage to widen a road, for example.
Yeah.
There would have to be a traffic study.
You could build a double-decker road.
You
Can we connect those sky bridges to it?
Yeah. Okay, and then the same question for City Hall South location. Would there need to be improvements made to the parking lots that exist right there? Directly west of existing City Hall South, where people do the angled parking.
Not changing.
No. So we're good with that. So okay.
Okay. So let's move on to the final site that we have on our list.
So Tibbetts Manor.
Here
we are.
But we are not remodeling this.
The lot is large, 128,000 square feet. This would be the 33,000 square foot City Hall, so 3 stories. Would fit where Lori shows it. We didn't talk a huge amount about Civic, so this is really an opportunity to flesh that out a little bit more. It is an underutilized building. Used to be a rental, now it's kind of office space, meeting space. It is adjacent to a very active park and open space with the next door. It does have fairly extensive wetland buffers that could limit, where you can put the building and parking. This parking lot is obviously not big enough.
Well, if you go back to, I think the buffers rule out the lot potentially, unless you want to. It just depends on the quality of the wetlands. If it's a very low quality wetland, then you only have 50-foot buffer. This could for sure fit. if it's a high quality wetland and you have a 225-foot buffer, that's why I put the feet on there, how the distance is. You have a 225-foot buffer, this option goes away. So you would have to do a wetland study to understand quality of the wetlands in order to understand if this site is fine. But even a 50-foot buffer,
very challenging.
Very challenging.
The creek has its own buffer as well.
As part of the wetland, the creek creates the wetland, so it's part, and the creek, right, but it would be, creek's buffer would be less than a wetland.
In fact, when, I think if you look back at the slides, previously we had said that the building was built in 1947, like that. This is like very obviously built in the 80s. Very obvious 1980s building. So when digging a little bit, and I'm not gonna say this is 100% true, but the original house was built in 1947, and then when this house was built, they had to build on top of the existing foundation because of the stream buffers and everything. So that's why it was listed as 1947. This house was built in 1982. So, interesting little factoid. Like,
Councilmember Marks.
It also does have the SR 900.
Yeah.
A plus or minus as a access and or traffic impact to the site.
So, we can't possibly evaluate this option without understanding whether it's 50 or 225, right? 225 just varies a bit. If it's a 225 buffer, just makes consideration. Is there is it that you can't, if it's a 225 foot buffer, is it that you can't go, or that you have to mitigate and do what else?
Being very nice to King County, this is going to be a time issue more than a cost issue. So I was working on a project that is outside of a wetland buffer by 12 feet, but it still took 2.5 years to get a permit for this very small project because King County's very onerous in their requirements. That being said, there's a certain amount of set aside that you can do in order to mitigate it. You have to, I think it's a 3-to-1 set aside to land that will never be developed. And it has to be quality land. It can't just be like a big field somewhere. So you would have to find a 3-to-1 set of something to offset it.
So it isn't that it's everything possibility, it's just very complexity can cost you to one time. Although if you could just, invoke the magic phrase abundance theory, maybe they could just that.
Typically, even the city can't expand the encouragement. So similar to maybe how this house was built on the existing foundation, we would have to stay within the limits of what's here now.
Would it be like a 4-story building?
Yeah.
I was planning for a 3-story building, but 4-story, the smaller the footprint, the better, but you're still going to have a parking issue.
Okay. Jonathan?
I was just looking at your diagram. Does that mean that you would demolish this building and put it up front, closer to the road? Okay.
Yeah, am I right? I'm just looking at the map. It looks like the only neighbors this will ever have is the parking lot. Like everything else, there's other stuff. And there's a crossing side of the parking lot. This will just be like a standalone little island. This is what it looks like.
Just a quick note. I think you'd be hard pressed to not have to put in a stoplight at this intersection. Given the speed of cars on the road, just the difficulty of getting in and out of the property.
I'm sure SR 900 community would really appreciate that.
Other comments or questions on this site option? Okay, I think we can move to
The exercise.
our exercise.
Get up and walk around a little bit. So Lori or Justin is going to hand out dots. Similarly, we have all 5 sites on the back wall. You could please, so remember, number 1 is the best. Number 1 is your number 1 ranked.
Low
site.
score is best.
Low score is best. Please only put 1 dot on each sheet.
Everyone listen closely to that instruction.
1 dot per sheet. Per person.
All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting and report out from our vote counters.
Thank you all for using only 1 dot.
We appreciate it. You all did a great job this time.
Here are the results.
Look at that.
Agreed.
Pickering, City Hall South, Senior Center, Albert, Manners.
I think we have 2 very clear front-running options that we can go develop more and bring you back.
I can't see that. Is it, what's the yellow?
Can you just walk?
Oh, so, okay, so Pickering score is 33, lower is better. City Hall South, 34, Senior Center, 56, Atworth, 57, Tibbetts Manor, 62. So we've got kind of 2 groups. Lower is better. Scores better. I put it right at the top of the sign.
Yes, we did. Reading.
We got to move to our next topic, but any quick reactions to the results of our poll? It's right. So the next steps in this will be to do some additional work exploring how these sites could be developed into future city halls.
Yeah, so this will help us bring you back options at the next meeting.
Great. Nice work.
Thank you.
Okay, next topic. I think, Justin, you're up.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Try to move quickly. We had 20 minutes allocated for this, and I'd like to get everybody out on time. So we want to talk a little bit about community outreach, what comes after the task force work. Gee, if you can move to the slide ahead, thank you. So I want to talk about what hallmarks of successful engagement effort look like. And we've talked about this a little bit more. We kind of want to restate it and show it up the slide here. As you take this to the community is going to need to see what your responsibility was, why you did this work, what you were tasked with doing. It shares the timeline of work completed to date. So, anything that was done before the task force, engineering studies of the building, et cetera, should be stated. And then identify where you are today, i.e., we've made this recommendation and what's to come in the future, whether that's a, future bond measure or a suggestion of one by maybe you all decide that we shouldn't do anything. Everything's perfect as is. No recommendation. I certainly don't think that's coming. Identify the why, explain the reasoning behind the task force's recommendation to city council. You can't just make the recommendation. You have to say why you got there. It documents the facility condition with imagery. We have a lot of that through the data so far. But also want to show kind of, photos of what existing City Hall Police Building looks like to give people who have not been in there an opportunity to see why you want to deal with this issue. Highlight the goals of the project. We have goals for the project identified at, earlier in the slideshow. You showed those. Potentially, I know, Mike, you referred, either Mike or Eric, one of you mentioned earlier, adding to that or, talking more about the task force's goals. The task force is not identifying its own goals for the project. That's something that could come. And it solicits feedback and incorporates that feedback into action. What shouldn't happen is you take this to council, council says, cool, and puts it on a ballot a couple of weeks later. Like there needs to be, not just telling people this is what we want to do, but get some more feedback. I think you've all really done great work, but ideally there are other people out there who can weigh in and give you some input on whether or not you're on the right track. Questions about what's up there? It's all relatively straightforward. Has anyone seen this? Seeing.
That's what I'm from the streets.
Okay. Are there individual, my guess is there are people in this room who are not familiar with this document or very familiar with this document. Not familiar. Okay, terrific. Thomas is here, who handles communications for the city.
Yes.
And has been engaged in the creation of this document and the continual updating of this. I was so impressed with this document when the first time I saw it, which was before we got started working with the city, and Autumn and Jean asked, what would you do if you were doing this? And I saw this document, I was like, this is what I would do. It's really good. So if you could speak a little bit to where this came from and how the city uses this, or how it has been used on projects before, I think this could be.
Sure, happy to. As Justin highlighted, my name is Thomas Rush. I'm the communications manager for the city. I haven't met you in the past. So one of the responsibilities the communications team has is to help all of our various projects achieve the right level of community engagement for whatever the goals are of those projects. We end up sitting with all the project managers, talking through what's needed and kind of devising a strategy to ensure their project is successful. So one of the ways we do that is with this toolkit in question. You can find it online. It's readily accessible to anyone in the public. What it achieves is one of two things. It's a working document. So what we do is provide it to all the project managers and say, take this, go look through it, kind of ascertain what the goals of the project are and how you'd like to achieve that. And we meet with them later on and we talk in detail about what makes sense. The reason we have a toolkit versus a just singular game plan is because every project is different. So what the goals of the project are, who the audience is, how much feedback a project really needs, those are always different. So the toolkit lets us pick and choose things out of our many toolkits and tools to really put together the right elements for each individual project. That's the gist of it. I think if you're looking through the document and you're kind of devising a strategy forward, the biggest thing we always ask is like, what level of project is this? Are we looking for something where we're just really educating the public real quick? Is it something where we're just informing them like, hey, this construction project is going to be impacting these roadways? Not a whole lot the community can really do outside of be aware of it. To other ones where we put together work groups and really help have the community have direct impact in facilitating and creating the project. So there's a big stream of options there. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So toolkit is really just a tool for any staff member to put together a plan to take to the public and make sure the project is successful in what it was trying to do.
Thank you, Thomas. Outreach tools. So ways to, if you can go back a slide. So, some of the ways that, on projects where, we've been successful or not successful. I mean, you want to hit all of these things. Digital, the first half of this is stuff that the city is, readily has access to. Digital assets, video, website, newsflash. The city has all of this stuff in its toolkit already. Printed materials, flyers that can be passed out at an event. Newsletters. The city has existing newsletters today. That information can be incorporated in, and these are platforms. These initial ones are really kind of information sharing. You're not really soliciting feedback or any of those, but it's ways to get the word out on what work has been done. Social media. The city maintains accounts across a variety of platforms. The city has a city podcast. That's another method to get information out. Leveraging existing events. So pop up a kiosk, throw up a tent, concerts on the green, or any of the, big city events. It could be your art walk, just finding ways to actually, and those are ones where you actually can solicit input because people are there and you get an opportunity to stop and have them talk to you. Some of them are going to talk for a long time. Some are going to say, I didn't know this was happening and walk away, but it raises awareness of the project. And one nice thing about when you're at existing events is you're engaging people who aren't necessarily directly engaged with the city. I mean, you only a certain type of person is going to listen to an Issaquah podcast produced by the city of Issaquah. There's a very different person who is going to take their kids to a concert on free. And you want to be able to find all of those audiences. Gather feedback through a survey. The city does a statistical survey annually, but there are certainly opportunities throughout the year to do non-scientific surveys, so to speak. We're just gathering input through any of these platforms above. Boards and commissions. The committee maintains a bunch of boards, commissions, and committees. That can be just a simple share out to any of those where there is representation to let them know what is happening. Maybe there are some that deserve to have some input, and maybe some just need to be made aware that this is happening. And then, neighborhood outreach, going and talking to each of the neighborhoods of the city. And then brief your vested partners. That could be, the downtown. That could be the downtown association. That could be the Chamber of Commerce. Things like Kiwanis. If you have other, Rotary, that kind of thing in the community. Local outposts. Those are places where you're going to find, future voters for there to be a measure, and having them. The more that people know that this is in the works, kind of working through the pipeline. You don't ever want people to. If there is a recommendation for a bond measure, you don't ever want people to learn about the bond measure when they open up their ballot. You want them to know that this is happening. Questions on that before we move forward? So I wanted to do a little brainstorming, take the last 10 minutes here just to, talk a little bit about where you would like to go with this. What is the narrative? What does the task force feel like its future role is in outreach, or what do you want it to be? What are our main outreach goals? What other communication tools should we consider? We haven't really talked about this as a group. Ideally, if there's a bond recommendation, there would be a political action committee that would stand up independent of the city, and presumably some people here could end up on that. But we're a long way from that. I mean, right now there's just a recommendation that is going to be made to council, and then council and or the task force needs to take this to the community. What do you all feel like your, opportunities are? What do you feel like we need to take the balls of the community on? And what do you feel like the narrative is right now?
What resonates for me mostly, and I think that the community would react to most, is the public safety aspect of it, and also what they're getting. It's not just a city hall for the employees to be at. It's really about the community groups that you would get and creating that community environment. So that's a solution. So I think it's public safety and then a community space.
I feel like part of our role is going to be kind of the education of what the issues truly are. I came at this when I found out about the task force, coming from where I grew up and stuff like that, that kind of heavily militarized police of its thing. And so the idea of police need stuff in town was actually made me concerned. What is the police doing? What's going on? And I wanted to know what was happening. I have a voice in it. And then I saw oh no, they have really legitimate problems, are really trying their best and really need this. And I did not know that and came at it from one place and ended up at another. And so teaching that and realizing that is important. Some mindsets are different, especially now this political climate. It's going to be difficult to get taxes in general as well as everything else going on. And so how to teach and show what the true problem is really everybody here that has.
Yeah, I was going to say the global, the national climate is huge, but one thing that's always struck me is how incredibly friendly and supportive every interaction I've ever had. Personally, I was maybe receiving with this police. I said the tiny police force for the size of the city. There's something like, this isn't here. And we used to have the 7 days those giant military trucks parked on the streets. Now we have running fire trucks. So I mean, maybe something where like it's not the onerous police presence, it's how we have our community have a police force that is for Issaquah, for us, very tight in.
April, then.
In the surveys, everybody mentioned the quality of life and how they appreciated that. So I think we need to hit on something that speaks to the quality of life here in Issaquah, maintaining that and demonstrating needs. We have a valid, demonstrated, calculated need. Because I think a lot of the issues we've had with maybe other bonds, there's a question of whether there's a need, whether there's going, whatever it is. So if we can hit those 2 points, I think we'd have power, the beginning of a powerful statement.
I think there's, a lot of messages that we need to convey here. One is the value of quality and direct relationship with community policing, to get way past what Paul brought up and way past what happened 5 years ago or whatever, and the outcomes of that. And the other meaning, when we need public safety, it's apparent. I think the other thing we need to tell is how level of valor they are demonstrating with their make do approach, and how it's time to take care of this need. And it's not a luxury item; it's absolutely essential.
Other thoughts on the messaging or narrative? Galen?
From an information standpoint, kind of a numbers and facts and figures here. I learned that we have basically slightly less than one officer per 1,000 citizens. And in the East Coast, it's typically 3 to 4 officers per 1,000 citizens. Here on the West Coast, it's 2. So there's those cultural differences and the density differences. But we're still vastly, our police force is much, much smaller for a community of our size than statistically we expect. I think a lot of people know that. Right? That's why they're doing a lot with little. And if people are feeling that, the community safety stuff and the quality of life is good, then we can build upon that, because we're not, this massive police force trying to suck up more stuff, right? It's just a small, dedicated cadre of people that are doing a good job.
Yeah, Jonathan.
I thought taking the tour of the police station, City Hall was pretty good, and it kind of opened my eyes. And if somehow you could show the rest of the community that same kind of image, how they're just kind of bursting at the seams, and there's just no room at all and show how the city that building was built in a certain time for a certain size of police force, and how it's grown over the years. It's not big enough. And the safety aspects as well.
Can you take pictures of that? Show it to the public?
Oh, God.
Those aspects of it, I don't think you want to cause panic either.
I don't think the average person knows that those departments just started.
I don't think you're giving the average person floor plans of these. but photography of the state of the building, I think, is a really good thing, and that's something that we regularly use on projects.
We do, but we also, a lot of successful projects that have passed bonds have had every Friday at 2:00, we'll do a tour. For 15 people that show up, we're going to do a tour. And sorry, but that's just that's just the way to get people to see it, and then there'll be advocates like you all are. A picture is not going to tell as much as walking through the space, smelling the space, feeling the space.
Plus, it puts the faces in front of them.
It does.
Paul and April.
The other part, so we're talking about police, is the city hall component, which I feel is actually going to be the same or more. I don't know what the cost in terms of the two is going to be, but the building a whole new building is also going to be a massive cost in this. And I'm assuming that this is going to be a joint venture, not two separate things, since they're so interconnected. I don't know. But so I just wanted to bring up the topic of that. We also have to sell the city hall component of it, in that, yeah, when you fix police, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I can fix them. But then now we have this lost city hall, and what the community gains from that. And the community spaces, or what that center looks like, is also the two. Both sides are very important for the selling of the boat.
April.
Well, the tour idea, I like that, but I think it's because I think we as citizens would be curious and have ownership over that. We're invested. So that's one idea, but I would also encourage you guys to think about what's in it for you. Think selfishly as a voter, not so much I'm so happy, love space, but I'm so glad you have more locker space or more. No, what's in it for you as a citizen? What do you get out of those improvements? I think that's what's going to.
Yeah, I think in that survey, you like survey meeting space was important.
Yeah. So Councilmember Marks and then Brooke.
So I used to do school bonds and levies before I got on the city council, and then have seen various bonds over the years. And the thing that it seems to me is that people respond if you have a vision, right? If you show them this is what's going to change in our city, this is what it's going to mean to our city, and if you convey that vision, people will get excited. And what they don't care about is like, well, it's going to increase operational efficiency 6.4%, right? Or we'll have 8 parking spots per 1,000 as compared to 4 parking spots per 1,000, whatever. But really a vision of what it would mean for the city to have our police have a better facility and our city hall have a better facility. And if you can convey that to people, they will respond to it, because nobody likes to pay more taxes. Nobody, if they're red, blue, or anywhere in between, nobody likes to pay more taxes. But they will come along if you convey to them that vision and what it's going to mean for them. So that's in the strongest language I can give. Like talk about that vision and what it means for our city, and people will respond.
Good advice.
I think so. 2 things. One is the capturing someone's attention, and like for me. I remember we on a Facebook group I posted a survey and said, hey, there was like all these 50 people in jail on average, and the woman was like, no, there were 7. And only go 7. And as a fault, they were like, no, we took the tour. So you're lying. Which is when I turned off the comments. I was like, they're not going here to get people. But like I've asked so many people, how many people do you think are in that jail? And they're like, no, I was shocked. Like we all kind of shocked. We didn't know. So there are things that can capture people's attention. A picture of the morning meeting with the break room right there, like all that kind of stuff. But then when you get their attention, it's like what Toa was saying. It's like, wow, this becomes a civic space. This becomes, if it's a Pickering Barn or wherever, the meeting space in this community. So I think it's capturing attention, different audiences, capture different ways, and then keep attention, tell the story.
Andrew.
Well, I agree kind of with what April was saying. I have to be selfish about it and think for the average person, how does this really affect me? And I can tell you, City Hall is going to be, I don't know how to quantify that. I mean, I don't think your average person ever interfaces all with City Hall. But to everybody, the common thread is police. And I'm like Galen, I like the numbers. If there's a way to put some data together, like what does this translate to retention rates for officers, increase in hires, overall ratio, hire to officer to citizen ratio. If there's stuff like that, and you can understand the impacts that might make for me, I would think that that's something I could look at easily as a citizen and be able to make a decision.
I'll take Mitch, and then we're kind of at the end of meeting time. So I'm going to do a quick wrap, and then we'll talk about the next meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring for that basic narrative that it's to sell this to the voters or present this to the voters, that it's really about public safety, which police retention is about public safety, which is about building community and retaining the residents here, not just retaining the police officers. And then also the sense of community with the new city hall. That's going to, I think that portion of the narrative, the sense of community with the new city hall, is a better sell if we're presenting it at current City Hall South and it's more of a community campus feel. It's that narrative loses a little bit of steam if the Pickering site is chosen, because you lose that campus, that community campus feel.
So this would be, we could carry this discussion on for a while. I think it will carry into the next meeting. We have one more meeting planned. We'll get to the timing on that in just a second. But I think what we need to keep thinking about is this in preparation for that next meeting. It is about populating what our recommendation is. And it's about what Councilmember March was talking about. It's about what's the vision? What are we trying to achieve as we look forward for the city? And how does this continue to advance that? What Justin was saying about the why. Why is it important that we do this? And what's the urgency to do it now? I mean, we've got to be able to speak to those elements, I think, to create the community urgency behind, well, if we don't do something, this starts to unravel what is a very, great city to live in. People can move here, do business here, visit here. So we've got to continue to build that narrative, the story that we want to tell. We want to tell it to the mayor and the council, but it's also with a lens to what's the story we're telling the community and the recommendation, because that's what spins into really that ongoing community dialogue. So this is really talking about setting that foundation. So keep thinking about that. We're going to need to start out, maybe bring an outline of what are the key elements of the recommendation, and we can talk about how we want to populate that, and we'll refine it after that last meeting as maybe one strategy, but we'll talk offline here, try to figure out what the best way to move forward with getting a recommendation formalized. Eric, as co-chair, you get to chime in too.
Thank you. I think we need to, as a touchstone, tie whatever the messaging is back to the city's guiding principles, its vision, its mission. And the more we do that, the more we can substantiate what our claims are about why we're doing this.
Also a good one. So we have our next meeting is, there was a poll that was sent out to just see who was available for a meeting in July. I think the majority of the respondents said the 29th would work. We want to confirm that here. And if we got hopefully most, if not all of us available, we'll book that meeting. And that would be our final scheduled meeting. And we'll talk about the sites, do a little bit more work in developing the site options for Pickering and City Hall South, and then populating our recommendation.
I think we had one person indicate that they were not available on the 29th, and we had 3 people indicate they were not available on the 31st. So
yeah, we're in the middle of summer.
I was shocked that there were that many available. So
yeah. So the 29th seemed to work. 29th. Okay, so we will.
Rock concert.
Which concert?
I don't want to go to. Oh my God. No, I want to go.
You can listen online.
The other 3 items, so thinking forward about, so when are we going to council with the recommendation? So, and I will send this out in an email, but just so you're thinking about right now, we're aiming for September 15th, which would be a regular council meeting. They take August off, so it gives us kind of a month to put everything together from the committee and prepare for that presentation. If there are a lot of people that do, obviously we want most of the task force there. So if there are going to be issues with that day, we do have the 22nd and 29th are also options that would go to committee of the whole instead. But I will shoot out an email on that, but think about those dates. Anybody that has some ticket.
And April.
It's a Monday.
You can always, if for some reason a conflict comes up on that 29th meeting and you're not able to attend, certainly you can send Jeannie and Autumn any thoughts or comments you have by email. Don't copy everybody, but you can send it to.
If you have more comments about the outreach portion or thoughts about that, you've got a while before our next meeting. We'll try to get information to you early so you have plenty of time to look at it and review it before the meeting as well. So I'm promising things on behalf of PLR. So.
You are. We're good.
Okay. I think that concludes our business for tonight. So we are adjourned at 8:37. Thanks.